I gotta get my crumbs. I need a some. I gotta get my crumbs. I need a some. I gotta get my crumbs. I need a some. I gotta get my crumbs. I need a some.
Crumbs. Hey,
Crumbs.
everybody. Hey, Crumb World. Welcome to episode 2. We're happy to be back. We survived narrowly. How's your week been, Ryan?
The same.
The same?
Yeah. You know, I'm kind of depressed that it's the last episodes of The Last Dance tonight.
I am too. I didn't know that until about 20 minutes ago.
I don't know if I'm mentally prepared to say goodbye.
Yeah. Well, it's like, we got to say goodbye all over again to Michael.
Right?
Mm-hmm. I had an eventful week. My basement flooded. Sub pump went out. Fun times. But, grateful that I didn't have to do anything else besides deal with that. So that's great.
Yeah, that sucks.
It was a pretty slow week on the music news front. I don't know. We didn't see a whole lot. We found a few things going on here, including this ridiculous suit. Ryan, do you want to tell them about the suit?
You sent me the suit article.
I think I did. Yeah.
Some maniac has invented what is essentially a hazmat suit for live events, and it is maybe the worst idea I've ever seen because it raised so many questions. Like, one, what? Like, one is this where we're heading? Like, is
Right.
this? I'm glad to see people thinking outside of the box. But there are so many things in here that this suit that I think allows you to drink and has headphones or some other stuff in it.
It looks like it has like a charging port near your face. I put the link in the comments if anybody wants to take a look at this. The first thing that jumped out to me was it is impractical, but the whole idea
beyond impractical.
The whole idea is that if you wore this, you could safely do a large gathering, and they seem to make it seem like there would be no side effects to wearing this suit.
But you're creating this whole thing. So the idea of this insane suit is that you go to a venue, are handed a suit like it's bowling shoes or something, get in the thing, like hang out for the show, and then give this suit back. So, one, you're expecting places to buy these suits, which is crazy. Then you have to have people who are what? So like every night you're disinfecting?
I guess so.
3, you have people who are refusing to wear masks right now. How are you going to get them into these rubber suits? And then like the expense, like is there an added suit expense on a ticket? I just don't understand.
Suit maintenance.
Suit maintenance.
So, yeah, a brief description for anybody who's just listening. It's literally like a spacesuit. You have like a plastic shield that comes down from a helmet. There's like you're wearing a kind of helmet thing, and then there's like a plastic shield that comes down over your neck, and then it looks like maybe some sort of like air ventilation / oxygen tank. There's basically like kitchen gloves involved that have all sorts of strange features. Looks very comfortable. So that's one idea. We might be going there. That's one place the music business could be headed. Unlikely.
That is a bad idea.
That's a bad idea. But other than that, I didn't really see much. We found we don't really have to talk about it, but I'm just going to post a link to an article that was in Medium that's kind of about kind of what the show's about how the music business is not going to come back the way that other industries are going to come back, and that it's going to take a greater effort and perhaps a restructuring. And it's called Our Industry Isn't Coming Back Like Yours Is. So I just posted that in the comments too, if anybody's interested in reading that.
That one was well written.
Yeah.
I like that one. And no suits. He didn't talk about spacesuits. I have always wanted to wear a spacesuit. since I was a kid. Seems like it would be fun. I don't want to wear one and go see a concert.
Yeah,
Unless I'm on mushrooms. Maybe if there are mushrooms involved.
Okay.
Well,
as kids, thinking about the future, this suit is certainly something I thought that maybe the space people of 2020 would be wearing. I just didn't think it would be these circumstances necessarily. But you had heard of a different fun little way that some venues might be trying to put shows on, especially in the jazz world.
Yeah, I heard the one that was interesting because everybody's talking about different things. There was a good article in the Tribune, which I'll send a link for, kind of about how jazz clubs in Chicago are dealing with this. And of course, everything is different. Dave Gemolo, who owns the Green Mill, was saying that he'd open tomorrow if he can. Other places are being more cautious. But, everybody's kind of on their own and trying to figure out how to handle things. I think things are going to be really local for a while. But one of the interesting things I heard is that there's a club in Philly that was talking about opening up and doing local shows, but feeling that they were only really comfortable doing like trios, like guitar or piano trios, like smaller groups, but no vocalists and no horns because they're worried about,
spit droplets.
Which I guess the spacesuits would help. But so, yeah, it was just interesting to hear that everybody's kind of like thinking of ways, to bring things back and how it's going to, I hadn't really thought about trumpets much.
Yeah, I feel like I feel like even last week when we did the show, like things have changed in terms of like attitude about when shows could happen again. Like you were saying, like the guy saying he would open immediately if he could. I was supposed to have a gig today. And the owner of the venue messaged me and Ryan Doty, who I was supposed to be playing the show with, on Friday and was like, well, technically we can be open. Do you guys want to do this show? And I was like, well, no, absolutely not. I don't. But I did. If you would have told me a week ago that somebody would be asking me if it was possible to play a show on May 17th, I would have said absolutely not. So that's changing fast.
Yeah.
It's obviously not maybe the best idea, but there's that. All right, I think that covers music news. I think I found that article you were talking about and put it in the comments there.
Oh yeah, that's the
as
one.
Well. Should we do our new segment, Ryan?
I'm pumped for our new segment.
Okay, it's going to be formatted correctly next time, but this is our new segment, Music Reviews.
Hey man, what have you been listening to?
Crumbs. Music Review. Crumbs. Music Review.
Yeah, it's music review time. Huge shout out to Johnny D, Jennifer Patricia Donahue for putting together that little video that will be landscape form next time. Ryan, what have you been listening to?
Are we just going to dive? Well, okay, I'm going to start. This might be burying the lead, but I'm going to start with things that I've liked that I've been listening to, which is burying the lead. But I've been pretty obsessed. I know this came out a while ago, but I am straight up obsessed with the like new Dylan tunes, especially his 17-minute long JFK assassination song. I listened to it again this morning. He's the only guy that could pull off the line "rub-a-dub-dub, a murder most foul," and make me go like,
Genius.
But it is. It's like it's brilliant. Like I'm pumped. New Dylan stuff is always kind of like, oh God, what's this going to be? And I don't know. There's so much in that song that I want to dive into. And then the other tracks too, like really great references that are very Dylan-esque. It's just, I'm pumped for the new record.
How long do you think it took Bob Dylan to write the 17-minute JFK song? Because my guess is 17 minutes. 17
minutes, yeah, I know. There are moments in the song, I was listening to it today, and there's like a drummer. The timing is all over the place. And clearly, I don't know if he's playing the piano. It feels like it. But he's just sitting there and kind of like going. And there are a few moments in the song where the drummer comes in and tries to like clearly cannot find the one.
Right.
Is all over the place, and I love every second of it. Like all of the everything about it, I think is perfect. And it's almost like the production on it is almost like Bob Dylan meets like Nick Cave and Warren Ellis.
Right.
I'm pretty pumped about that. What about you?
There were two great local albums actually that came out in the past couple weeks. One was our buddy Jordan Sellergren put out a new album called Sweet Bitter Tears.
Oh yeah.
That features some of our favorite Iowa City musicians, including Suitcase Randall Davis and Matt Berneman and Rich Wager, and just a great, country album. It's definitely a departure from Jordan's previous stuff, which is cool to see some evolution and just going in a new direction. And also, Paul Carey put out an amazing album called Raven, which I recommend everybody check out. It's just like a spooky, dark. He's just got such a great sound and tone, and it matches the doom and gloom of nowadays, I think. But it's like a songwriter spooky folk album. It's awesome. Been listening to that a lot.
I love spooky folk.
Yeah, put on the song "Just Walking" while you're walking around, and it'll bring the world to life around you. What have you been listening to that you don't like, Ryan?
Well, Brian, I'm glad you asked. So I guess this is going to be a controversial take here on Crumbs, episode 2.
We're diving in.
So I'm going to start this by saying that the new Jason Isbell came out. I've had a bizarre relationship with the music of Jason Isbell and for a long time. And so I always, and some of that comes back to, so I'll say that it was, over 10 years ago. It was in Tom Schrader and His Ego. This was post Drive-By Truckers, pre-sober Jason Isbell. And we did some support for him. And I can say that one of the gigs was hands down the weirdest gig I ever played. Like one of the worst, those like nightmare gigs.
Mm-hmm.
He was at the top of my nightmare gig list, to the point that like this was a smaller place. They wouldn't move any of their gear. Like they wouldn't strike any pedal boards, wouldn't share the drum kit, wouldn't do anything. So we had to set up on the floor in front of the stage to play. And it was like, that's how the night started.
Yeah.
We didn't get paid, which in retrospect is the venue's fault, but I held Jason Isbell personally responsible for my not getting $25 that night. But so that's like, and I guess we could talk about this a little, like that's tainted my Isbell fandom ever since. Like I can't escape the like, and it's not his fault, but I can't, like I've always had like a chip on my shoulder.
Right.
Then he put out Southeastern. I love that record. I think that record's fantastic. Mike Musicanto and I were on tour when that record came out and we burned it out. I thought it was great. And then every subsequent record, as he's like climbed the echelon of being, the Americana superstar, it felt like the same narrative over and over again. And not narrative just from him, but like the press narrative. And so I'm babbling, but like you scrutinize those people more, right? Like, oh, this guy is the greatest lyric. Oh, this guy. But then they're always talking about the same thing. So this new record was coming out and I saw press, and the first line of every article I read about this record was like, Isbell's 4th record since being sober. And it just was driving me insane. You don't get 7 years of sober. Like, that's great. I'm glad you're sober. Right. But like, Dylan wrote one great divorce record. We didn't refer to every record after that, like Dylan's post-divorce catalog.
Sure.
Or, like the Beatles ate acid and they did Sgt. Pepper and, a couple records. It wasn't like years of, but Isbell, it seems like everything he does is this focus of being sober.
I'm sober now. Well, and I think that is something that is present on all of his albums, but maybe not every song, but it certainly seems like the cornerstone songs are like that, or like this, I have this new life now that I'm sober. And I too did not love the new album. In that article, I think you're talking about, the New York Times did a profile of Isbell and Amanda Shires. There's like a quote from Dave Cobb where he talks about how they wanted it to be more produced and more 80s feeling. And that made me worried. And then when I heard it, my worries like came true. I just feel like it's I think the best Isbell is Isbell with a guitar and some minimal stuff behind him. And when you kind of sugarcoat everything, it kind of puts a new light on the words. Whereas if he played the same songs that I love full band and polished up, maybe I wouldn't love them as much. But yeah, it's I was talking to our buddy and our guest's bandmate, John Lindenbaum, last night about this, or 2 nights ago. And he made a really good point where he said that for all the flaws of previous albums, every single album that Isbell's put out has had at least one really good song on it, really fantastic song. And this one seems to be kind of missing it. And that New York Times profile, he talks about how he felt pressure now that he is Jason Isbell to make a Jason Isbell record. And they kind of used it as a way to make it seem like, and he did it again, but to me, it maybe was a softening of the blow.
Yeah, well, it's so like the first time I listened to it, I'm like, am I just listening to this through the prism of my my past experience, or like how I think about the guy, or am I like able to listen to this and give it a fair shake? But then, he's been deemed the king of this thing, the best lyricist, the best songwriter. And so I am going to scrutinize it a little bit more. And there's bad songwriting on it. Like there's a ton of cliches. Like I just think going through some of the lyrics, there are some lines in there that I'm just like, what are you talking about? Like the chorus of one song, remembering somebody, and the first question he asks is, do you still take notes? Like referring to somebody in the past. Like I don't think about anybody from my past that I grew up with wondering if they're still taking notes, or even noticed if they were good note takers in the first place. Not something interesting. Same song has a line that says, do the dead believe in ghosts? I thought about that line for 25 minutes because who cares?
I mentioned that to John as well.
He has these lines that are like, you think that they're like, that he wrote and was like, that's a good line. And it's like, but it doesn't mean anything. And then they're all followed by some cliche. So
do you think that is part of being a writer who is seen, with like multiple Grammys and who is like the king of Americana writing? Do you think that it's him maybe grasping at greatness too much, or like trying to make things have so much gravity that that it one-ups his previous songs and it just comes across as cliche, or he just misses it?
So I think you're on. So I think it's what I don't like about. So all of these things said, if somebody connects with it, and if somebody likes to hear this kind of songwriting, that's
right.
Like, I'm here and life can get tough and we just got to pull ourselves up. Great. Like, I don't want to, this is all subjective, but for me, the last thing I want to hear are like cliches and, I've got my arms, and it feels like that. Yeah. It feels like everything he's saying is trying to be profound. Like, oh, I'm really remembering these people, or, oh, like this moment is so it's like it feels like it takes itself too seriously. There's not like much levity in it. And then, yeah, like there are just lines that I think, if you or I were sitting there, we would cross out.
Sure.
I'm never gonna, I think a lot of writers look at stuff and would be like, are you going to start this song out by saying, what have I done to help, or, somebody save me?
Sure.
There's just something about that I'm like, ugh.
I feel that. And I'm sure that most of or at least a good chunk of our listeners will disagree, and feel free to let us know how much you disagree or agree on that. We're not opposed to criticism. But I feel like we've kept Andre waiting long enough. Should we bring Andre on?
Let's bring him on.
Let's bring Andre on. All right. Here we go. Andre Perry, ladies and gentlemen, the executive director of the Englert Theater here in Iowa City, the executive director and co-founder of Mission Creek Festival and Witching Hour Festival, and author of a new book called Some of Us Are Very Hungry Now, available now via $2 radio. Andre Perry, welcome to the show. How's it going, man?
Yo, what's up, y'all? It's going well, and I'm just thinking about this book because you guys were talking about him for so long. I know that we talked in the pre-show that I hadn't listened to the record yet. Just been really busy, a million things going on, but I will get to it because I really do believe in Jason as an artist, and I really respect him and I love him. And I think I agree with without listening to him, I kind of agree with the trajectory that you guys are suggesting for him. But I think he's one of those guys, like, we just gotta stick with him because he's like a good dude who just like is committed to making art. So I'm gonna like pull for him forever. I don't have to love all of his albums, but I love his ethos and I love his work ethic. And he did make some dope ass songs a while ago. I was just listening to Mobb Deep this weekend, and like Mobb Deep definitely has had some weak material on their like tail end. As well as like that, like, miraculous, like one good track, like on a bad album where you're like, they still got it or whatever. But because of the great stuff they wrote, like, they're just kind of always with me. And because their ethic was always, even though they were keeping it like really, really real, they were also just like, we're just going to make beats and we're going to make lyrics. And like, that's what we're going to do. And I just like respect people who just make art unapologetically, and aren't like ridiculous outside of that. Like Jason as well, like just seems like he's like really chill and is like always like really nice now, even if he wasn't nice when Brian played that show with him back then. Like now he's like grown up and he's just like a nice guy. So like, I got his back. That said, the lyric was, do the dead believe in ghosts?
That's
that
right.
is gonna linger with me as I go home after this discussion.
Right.
So I just gotta think about that.
But I think
But
that's
it would be different, like if David Byrne said it with the Talking Heads in like 1978 at a More Songs About Buildings and Food show, or if like Cardi B said it yesterday on a record, or if like Chick said it on a record in 2008, like would the line be like worse or better? Or if like Kanye said it, like he could get away with it, right? Like, I don't know.
Well, if Kanye
Context
said
is
it,
important.
I think if Kanye said it, it would make more sense to me. Just because he would somehow be able to sell that better. But I think you bring up a good point with some of these people, because like I think about the Talking Heads or some of these, like these bands with these epic careers, and I think one of the things I feel bad about guys like Isbell for that we were touching on is I don't think he's the one out, talking about, oh, this is my fourth sober album, but everybody puts that on him. And so I wonder if sometimes he gets pushed into this box of like Brian, you were saying that he's, trying to write this Isbell record. So do people get put into a box to write a certain way? I kind of want to hear his record just like, totally something completely different, like write about different character, write about something else. Because I think I'm hearing it through the prism. And again, this isn't his fault, but I'm hearing it through this prism of 7 years of being told this guy's sober and singing about, pulling yourself up and whatever it is. And I think that it's worn thin on this record for me, if that makes sense.
Mm.
Whereas like David Byrne would make a sober record, and then his next record would be like, now a record about, Toyotas and cocaine.
That's a very good point. Well, Andre, thanks for being here. Now that we've, I think, fully completed our record review portion of the show, which has been like 20 minutes. How's quarantine treating you? I know you're getting ready to welcome a new baby into the world, which is exciting. Any day now. We weren't sure if we'd be able to squeeze you in. But working from home, working on the Englert, like how's the quarantine life been so far?
Outside of the anxiety about public health and I think a lot of people's economic situations on the local, state, national, and global level, it's going okay. Um, yeah, there's obviously a lot of existential stress about how we're moving through this period. Who's going to like literally survive like in an ICU? Um, how like just communities are going to be affected because people just can't make it because they don't have enough money or businesses don't have enough money to survive. So yeah, like all that is in play on both the very immediate, like where I live in Iowa level to like someone living, in China. So that's on my mind. But the flip side is that, like many people, I'm spending a lot of time with my family, which is great. And work has not slowed down; it's only accelerated because being in an industry where you're working on live events, there's so much uncertainty, there's so much like pushing around, moving around, and so that has been nonstop. Which at the beginning was very nerve wracking, and now I've just kind of like taken it on. It's just like this is where we are, so this is the challenge in front of us. Let's navigate it and let's do the best work we can for the organization I work for, as well as for the community that I'm in.
So working for a nonprofit like the Englert Theater, there's a lot of fundraising and obviously ticket sales are really important. How is the Englert staying afloat in this time? And maybe while you're at it, you can touch on, how is the Englert looking forward to how they're going to re-enter the community and what needs to change on that front?
Indeed. So I guess we should maybe define stay afloat, but not having any earned income for the last few months during a period which is like mega robust for us. And this year, like we came out like banging. The shows were amazing. The rental partners we're working with were amazing, and the lineup that was going to happen in March through May, and with Mission Creek Festival happening in the middle of that, was just going to be great. I think in terms of like aesthetic quality, in terms of community engagement, and in terms of the numbers. And so like all the things you want to do well are like doing really well. So having all that pulled away was a big hit for us. And our budget is like roughly $2 million a year, which is like really, really small compared to some of these like other big institutions that are out there or venues that are out there. So we lost about like a fifth of that in 2 to 3 months. So that's like not good from a financial side. And there are some things that have been, I think, real like helpful for us, which is we did apply for one of those PPP loans from the federal government, and we did get one, and that literally kept our full-time staff whole for this last 2 month period, which is great for the most obvious reason, and for like I think what the purpose of that loan was, despite all the press that's been around it, is was trying to keep like I think paychecks in some Americans' pockets, and we were able to do that, like including my own pocket, and so that's very useful. So like we didn't default on our loans or all of our other personal stuff, which is we just assume there's no more federal support coming down the line, being a little bit less hours, less wages. In terms of the full-time staff, we haven't laid anyone off, and so it's not great that we're reducing hours and reducing wages, but it's also like maybe I'm happy that we didn't have to lay everyone off. And one of the most important reasons, and I'll get to the last question here, is that during this time of everyone still being 100%, we've been able to like really rethink how do we design programming that can be useful, joyful for the community that we're in. And so we used to do everything on stages. And at some point, we'll have our stages, whether it's at the Englert or the clubs or the festivals we do down the line. But in the meantime, we're like flipping everything. We've got a whole new season of programming coming out that's going to feature local and regional artists, probably a couple folks from further afar. And I think we're just gonna flip the script on what we do. Like our mission is to inspire and activate positive community growth through the arts. We most traditionally have done that with like an amazing show on a stage, maybe even Jason Isbell himself providing that show, right? And we can't do that right now, and hopefully we will do that again. So we're just going to change it up entirely and bring some new content that's hopefully dope and at least experimental and innovative and trying to take a chance. But it could just end up being like the worst album.
It could. So we have talked about this before, and you kind of touched on it there about how music going forward as things start to reopen and as reopening kind of is different depending on where you are. And touring is going to be more difficult as, it's hard to tour to California if you can't play in Oklahoma and Colorado or whatever. And we have kind of talked about how music might be trending more regional. Do you think that that's kind of how this is going to unfold? Do you think the time of the national tour it's going to be a long time before people are doing national tours, or do you think that might come back faster than people anticipate?
Well, there may be two pieces there. On one side, while we're kind of in this like DIY phase, we're like, are we open? Are we closed? Do people feel cool coming out to stuff? Do they not feel cool coming out to stuff? Then it just might make more sense from a logistical standpoint to really breathe some life into, supporting more of the regional entities that exist here, whether it's just, artists from Iowa or bringing in bands from Chicago, where it's like, hey, you only have to drive 3 hours. So like, if this thing totally falls apart, it's not the end of the world, and we can get you in a hotel for the night, and you're just only going back home. So just the numbers and the logistics might make a lot more sense while things are uncertain. In terms of, big tours coming back, I think obviously like the bigger cogs in the industry, whether it's like Live Nation or AEG or, like a William Morris or Paradigm, I think we'll have a lot to determine and when that comes back online for the independents and kind of smaller folks who are in the industry. But there's also just like audiences, right? And country or folk or Americana or indie rock or, like indie rap or electronic. I feel like for like a lot of independents might be, particularly once you start to get into 500, 1,000 cap, 3,000 cap arena, like they just might not be as willing to go to that festival. Maybe young people will, because like they just might be just a little bit like braver about the whole thing and be like, whatever, like it's fine. But from my perspective, it's only worth really going back to, having shows 500 people on up or whatever the threshold is. If everyone just feels like it's a great time, if your staff is stoked to be there, if the artist shows up, feels just super excited to be there and safe, and if the audience is able to go there and 100% give them to the release of a show, of seeing something live, like who knows, like do the Dead think about Ghosts might just be awesome if you're like 2 double IPAs in and you're like third row, like it just might hit you in a way that it can't hit you on vinyl. And like I think like part of going to a live show is just being able to give yourself to it, whether it's like a basement or like the most beautiful like historic theater in America.
Yeah. So that kind of pulls me into the other aspect of what you do is running some amazing festivals. And I've been thinking a lot about how this is going to affect festival culture moving forward, and kind of how festival culture before this had really fundamentally altered what the music business was. And one of the things that I've always admired about like Mission Creek in particular is I'm not crazy about as a fan. I don't love a lot of music festivals because my favorite way to see a show is in a club. Like I like an intimate experience. I like it to see a band do their thing. And that's Mission Creek is a festival of that, like clubs up to the theater. The whole community is involved, but really like, it also has this whole other element of, you know, the literature angle, and then, you know, there's just so many moving parts. How do you think, um how do you think you see the future of the festival world, you know, or the impact of festivals going forward, because they were really kind of ubiquitous in touring for the past few years?
Um, it's tough to know. I remember when Mission Creek was kind of getting its legs, like maybe like 4 or 5 years in, and had like starting to understand exactly what we were doing. Um, we started. We I think we saw ourselves in line with all these other festivals in the festival world. Not to be ridiculous and be like we saw ourselves being the same size as like a Coachella, which is like 1 million times our size. But it just felt like everyone was in the festival world. But then as like more and more and more festivals just started popping up in every city, town, market possible, and more started to like I think become a lot bigger than we were. Uh, we didn't see ourselves as I think aligned with those festivals. Like much love to all the work that they're doing, and we respect them and watch them with a lot of joy. But we understood that our work was to like maybe go a little bit smaller and be really specific to really home in on intimate experiences, to home in on what happens when you cross the lines between literature and music, and to really support independent voices. And so then I think we started looking, toward like a Big Ears or something like that, which is we're not trying to do what Big Ears are trying to do, but like really respect like the dedication to like having a programmatic mission or a programmatic vision, and just like really sticking to it and really trying to connect that vision with the community that they're in that case, Knoxville, Tennessee, and for us, Iowa City, Iowa. Um, so I said all that to say, I think the super big festivals for certain, I mean, coming back to AEG and Live Nation, I think they're going to have to decide what they think what future seems viable. Just I know AEG's got a staking golden voice, so like I think Coachella is like a standard bearer for like festivals. So like they just need to figure out how does that live, how does that continue to survive. Can that model only work with a few of them, that they can do? Because obviously I don't have the numbers or anything, but it just seemed like there weren't there were too many of those size festivals to like be sustainable even outside of like pandemic conditions, right? Like we were almost coming to like a point where they just had to make a decision, and maybe just this will force the decision. There was a great profile of what's his name, Paul Tullett, who runs Coachella in the New Yorker a few years ago, and they were even talking about how between like I can't remember if it was Governor's Island in New York, they're like the thing doesn't make money, but like they have to keep producing it so that they don't get like cut out of the market, right? Just to keep their foothold, which I get, from a distance. But for those festivals, I'm not sure what's going to happen. It seems like there might be some shrinkage, and which might be good because then I think the quality will really go up, and it'll become much more of a unique experience to go out to a field with 100,000 people and see Radiohead or whatever. Um, for us, as soon as it's like safe to do what we do and the community and the doctors say it's good, then we're just going to go, we're going to dig deeper into like our programmatic vision and keep that intimate experience, and that chance that you might show up to something that you never heard of and have your life changed and feel better about life, whether you're 19 or like 65. We're going to live in that world for as long as we can.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that you do so well, and you mentioned my other favorite festival, which is Big Ears. One of the things that you do so well is that there always seems to be there's like a socially conscious element to your festival. And I think one of the big losses this year, uh, of some of this stuff going away is just in this political climate, the way that the world is. Art does a lot to motivate people. Art does a lot to bring people together, and art does a lot to to kind of explain these times and help get through this. And it's kind of crazy that so many of these things, I mean, we'd been talking about some stuff. I knew some of the programming that was coming up through the year, and it's kind of crazy that some of that is gone now. But it also makes me wonder what people are working on and what people are going to come out with, you know, next year, because it really is amazing to think, I think, what was it? God, I can't remember her name, who did Witching Hour last year. Grimes? Rachel Grimes?
Crumbs. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, these big pieces, these big scale pieces, Micaiah McCraven was working on in these times. You know, we've talked about, you have a good way of presenting these really socially conscious things. How does it feel? This is a long-winded question of me saying, like, how does it feel for both of you being in Iowa, where it seems like Iowa's a really kind of crazy example of this insane polarization between the left and the right, and you guys kind of filter the art through that? Do you know what I mean? Like, do you miss putting on shows during this stuff when, like, you want people to speak truth to power? I don't know.
I mean, I do and I don't. I mean, we kind of talked last week about the last show that happened before all this went down, which was a show, or at least the last show I went to was a show I booked with you. That was Julian Lodge and Dave King at the Trumpet Blossom, which was a sold out show in a tiny room. And it was Friday the 13th. It was March 13th. And that crowd was pretty chill about it. Everybody seemed pretty chill about it. There was definitely some people upset that the show was happening online. And the most egregious example of like this weird polarization, like don't tell me what to do vibe, which I guess was kind of a foreshadowing of how it was going to get in Iowa City now. Was as everybody was leaving, I was giving them a squirt of hand sanitizer, and everybody was gratefully taking it and cleaning their hands, and one guy refused it and then licked his hand in front of me and like laughed and walked away, which was very strange. And given that behavior seems to be much more common nowadays, I may be happy that I'm not in charge of shows going on when you have people refusing to wear masks and stuff like that. I mean, I don't know. I mean, like Andre, when you think about, reopening, you guys have to be thinking about, what kind of safety measures you're going to take at the door, and what kind of stuff you're going to make available to the patrons, and how to deal with people who refuse to do that. Is the plan to make mask wearing mandatory, or do you think that you guys wouldn't have a show while that was still necessary?
My current view, which I'll just accentuate this from when I said it earlier, is I think it's appropriate for us to have shows when the staff, the artist, and the audience all feel super excited to be there.
Right.
And so maybe there are some safety measures that we just have to take, because that's the new standard. But if it's a new standard, that's okay. But like trying to have a show tomorrow, I think we would have some people who are like, yes, I'm going to do all the things that you're asking me to do that are safe, and I'll be like 7 feet away or whatever. Other people would be like, no, like don't tell me what to do. And I don't think we want to be in that position, because it's just not creating an excellent environment for people on a spiritual level, because as long as there's like a grave threat out there, you're going to have the person who wants to wear a 2-face mask, and then you're going to have the person who's like 0-face mask, and I'm going to spit like on 3 people, and we cannot like meet our mission if that's like the world that we live in. If it's like a little bit Mad Max and like we're not going back to any world in which like people were just being cool and like just trying to go to see shows, then we'll have to like pivot and figure out what we look like in that space. But until that is the ultimatum, I think, from the world, then we're just going to try to wait until the time when people feel excited about coming to shows, and that a performance is a place where they can have a transformative experience as a staff member for an organization, as an artist on the road, or as someone who lives in a community.
It's an interesting kind of wrinkle to all of this, that music and obviously live performance is supposed to be something that brings people together, and that people who have different political views can like the same music or have the same transformative experience at a show. But as shows start to come back early, maybe too soon, it almost seems like these, first of all, the bands or artists who are playing it may be taking a political stance, but simply by playing the show, and alienating, or not alienating, but further separating people between the people who are willing to go to a show now and the people who are not, and where they play, and it feels like it could be the beginning of something where even venues are becoming politicized in a way of who is going to force people to wear masks and who is not, and all of that, which is, I mean, there's not really a question wrapped in that, but that just made me think of how that could unfold. And that's a scary thing, because even now in Iowa, while they have opened 50% capacity, the restaurants, but not the bars, which doesn't make any sense. You can definitely tell which, restaurants are now kind of forced to show their political hand in a way that they haven't had to before. When you drive downtown and you see which patios are full of people and nobody's wearing masks, it kind of changes that whole thing. So hopefully the future does not entail us us having to do that. Shifting gears right now, Andre, what's going on with Witching Hour? Are you guys still planning on, is the plan right now to still have Witching Hour happen as usual? For people who don't know, Witching Hour is a festival that takes place in October, or late in the middle of the fall, in Iowa City, that focuses on new work and kind of many different forms of presentation of art and ideas, which is something that feels sorely needed right now. But, I guess I don't know what the plan is for that, Andre. Maybe you can talk about that.
So we are currently planning to do a virtual version of Witching Hour, and the Englert produces Witching Hour with Little Village, which of course you know. And so we want to create an event that hopefully brings, I don't know if relief is the right word, but connection, and particularly connection for artists and arts workers this time around. We hope that the fall edition can be a way, even if we can't all be in the same space, can we think about what it means to be an artist or someone who supports the arts, and how we push that forward in this next era. That's what we want Witching Hour 2020 to be. And so within that, there'll be some thought, there'll be some performance, and we're gonna figure that out. But we are gonna do it, and it's gonna be a little different than it's been in the past, just because of the really extraordinary situations that we're moving through right now. And I think something that we've learned is, some things could shift, and maybe there is a way to publicly gather in the fall. But in terms of planning a festival, it's like really hard to plan in like an uncertain environment. Whereas if we just had a regular show, I feel like we would only really need to know a few weeks out in order to turn the lights back on and get down to business. But a festival is a different sort of planning mechanism. So and this will still be within a short band, but I'm going to go on paternity leave when we have our new kid. I'm going to come back, and then the team's just going to go right down to business and create this event. And we'll also be watching some other people who are doing some virtual artistic and thought-provoking happenings, and just trying to get it down, get it perfect. And we're going to drop something that I think is going to be fun and hopefully rejuvenating and spiritual for folk.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's. I mean, this time has brought up, and you kind of just touched on this, that it's really weird to think about art and audience right now, and that experience, and it being moved to a virtual experience is, the person to person interaction is gone. but it is kind of like what I was talking about before. It's a very weird time as an artist and as a ticket buyer, to kind of miss that community experience, especially the ones that are commenting on the time that we're living through, that are kind of, relating it back to us. So it'll be interesting to see how that translates, how some of that translates. I mean, people have been doing it online, but to see how that translates to a virtual experience.
So Andre, you're a musician as well, and I guess we could quickly get to a guest question before we shift gears. A certain guest is wondering when the release date of the 5th Lonelyhearts LP might be. And we'd ask the hard questions here on Crumbs, so I guess we'll have to pose that question to you, Andre. Where are you at on the new Lonelyhearts LP?
Well, it might seem ridiculous to say, and only because there are like 7 people who listen to the Lonelyhearts, though they listen like hard. So I got to give love to those folks. Like there may not have been like a better time for the Lonelyhearts to really like emerge. I mean, our last album was about like how radioactive bats had to police us because like humans couldn't get it right. Like, I mean, at its like core, there were many cores, but that was one of them. And like that maybe is like hitting a little too close to home right now. So I feel Lonelyhearts is probably going to happen faster than it would have had the pandemic not happened, because like life just would have been too normal if we weren't in this. And I would have been doing all the work I do, having a kid and moving forward, and there would be like no like this band called Naughtalands has been like just dropping like the best music for like the last like couple of years. So I'm just like, no one needs like new Lonelyhearts. Like this dude is doing just fine on his own. But
John's probably.
I feel like the pandemic has like kind of like lit my spiritual fire.
Right.
Yeah. John probably has 10 records worth of Lonelyhearts material ready to go at any given moment. I feel like he's probably written 5 songs today.
Any moment.
So before all of this hit, Andre, you were touring, doing readings and stuff across the country on your book. Some of us are very hungry now. You luckily got a lot of those dates in ahead of time, but what's it like trying to promote a new book, or is there any promotion of a new book during this time? I would think that it would be a good time for book sales because people aren't sitting at home not able to go to the movies or whatever, or concerts.
Yeah. I did get through like the first few legs of my book tour. The book came out in November. And so, yeah, definitely very lucky to be on the road. I was on the East Coast, I was on the West Coast, and then I was starting to do festivals and conferences and things like that. And then everything kind of just ground to a halt, like in the beginning of March, when the annual Writers Conference, AWP, it happened, but like I don't think very many people went. And so that was kind of like, oh, book stuff is like done. The publishing industry is just going to like just be quiet for a minute. Obviously, a lot of writers have had, their pub dates, in April and May, and those books are still coming out for the most part. So it's been a different landscape. I've started to do virtual events. I did an event for one festival at Ithaca College's the New Voices Festival, and that was really well managed and really well run. I'm doing a few more things. I did a couple things last week, hopefully doing one thing this week before our new kid comes. So there'll probably be a few things that are, just going to pass through that I'll do that are virtual events. And there'll also be, it's probably some stuff that I do once we're past this, so like probably like 2021 or beyond. But But for me, it's actually been a good sign of like a natural turning point to making sure that I stay engaged in terms of supporting the book in every way that I can, which I will do furiously. But also, my new projects are starting to take form and take shape, and so I've been in like such deep like note taking, figuring out new narratives and new structures for what the next book is going to be like. And so, especially when we have a kid and I'm just like on the couch or, like in between naps and stuff, I'll just be like in full note taking mode, probably for the next few months, and then just start to get back to the hard work of like finishing that new book. So for losing all these amazing festival events and other things, creation mode.
There's a new Isbell song about a great note taker. So,
It's about Andre, actually. And the answer is yes. He is
I still take notes.
Well, thanks so much for joining us, Andre. We won't keep you all afternoon. You got to get Josephine her attention before it gets split, I assume. But thanks so much for joining us in this second episode of.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Andre.
Yeah.
Always great talking to you.
Yeah, it's awesome to see you guys, and just keep doing all the work that you guys do in all the different forms you do as both artists and community builders by helping artists and booking shows, and just keep doing all of that. It's all important. Obviously, everything has been shaken up for us, and there are some real challenges, economically for everyone involved in the music and the arts industries. We just have to just like find a way to like keep eating, like pay the rent or the mortgage or whatever it is. Just find a way to survive and also use the time to figure out, better methods and better structures for what we do. And I think more humane structures for what we do, so like let's make some good shit out of the terrible shit. That's my official statement.
Hell yeah.
I love it.
All right. Well, thanks for watching, everybody. Thanks for listening at home. Tune in next week when we'll have the great Willie T. Taylor with us, which will definitely be a different perspective on the pandemic. We'll see you all next time. Bye.